Hi there. I am Connie Dodson, District 6 City Councilor, as most of you know. Rather than meeting in person this month, we decided to do something a little bit different. We decided to do an update, kind of a virtual video interview update for both the Parks Department and the Fire Department. Now I'm here with Chief Little with the Fire Department. One of the things I wanted to point out, obviously, we won't be wearing masks. We are both fully vaccinated, however, and fully support vaccination and layering when you are out and about and in public and unable to social distance as we are here today. Chief Little, the purpose of me bringing you in, of course, I do this every fall as we're transitioning into colder weather and trying to help people prepare for the dangers of colder weather, whether it be, space heaters and the uses of extension cords, cleaning your chimney, those things that they need to do to be prepared and stay safe over the winter holidays and potential emergencies that we may go through, whether it be power outages or things like that for our winter months, so that they have the ability to prepare in advance and make sure that they're staying as safe as they can through those winter months. So I'm going to let you kind of take the lead in that discussion, and I may ask questions as we go along.
Great. Well, thanks for having me here.
Sure.
This is certainly an important topic, and the Tulsa Fire Department cares about the community and wants to make sure that they stay safe. Part of being safe and ensuring that your family is safe is preparation most of the time. It's thinking ahead of time and being ready for those emergencies. So you should see through the fire department platforms, your platform, maybe on this video, we'll have some checklists of things that you can do at your home to be prepared. And that includes heating equipment. So if you have a wood-burning stove, a fireplace that you intend on using, it's a pretty good idea to have somebody come out and inspect that. Make sure it's been cleaned and that it's not going to cause a problem. Make sure the damper works properly so you're not going to have CO problems. The same goes for your HVAC systems. Make sure those have been serviced. Make sure they're in good condition. If that were to go out even, we're not necessarily talking about a CO issue, but you have to have heat to stay warm, So we want you to have professionals come and look at those and make sure that they're properly cleaned and ready. It's a good idea if you have any, Oklahoma's crazy. We have tornadoes and winter storms and, even at our smaller storms with these high winds, you notice there's branches on the ground the next day. So that's something to think about. If you have very large branches over your home, you might have a tree service come out and clean those up and remove them, because you have a tornado come through, it could put that branch through your house, which it could injure you, and it could certainly damage your home to a point that it might not be able to be repaired. It's a good idea to have rock salt or sand at your home so that if your sidewalks do ice, you don't fall, because that's a danger. The National Weather Service refers to these winter storms as deceptive killers, because it's often indirectly that they harm people. It's crashes on the roadways because they're not used to those conditions. Hypothermia from prolonged exposure. Again, just preparing ahead of time. Make sure you have some water in your home, enough for a couple of days, because we oftentimes get power knocked out for a couple of days, and communication. So have some food, some canned foods that you can eat. I always recommend that you have some external battery chargers for your cell phones, because if you lose the ability to communicate, you might not be able to call for help. It's very important to be able to listen to your local weather, listen to the counselor's information coming out, and the fire department and the police department, because we are going to continue to try to get you important information. And if you don't have a way to receive that, you might not know of dangers that are on the way.
That's true. And you brought up something that reminded me of something as well. I actually had to drive around the block a couple of years back when we had some very cold weather. One of my neighbors that lives behind me and feeds the birds and things like that had stepped out to feed the birds and accidentally locked herself out of the house. She's elderly, couldn't get over the fence to go around the house, didn't know how she would anyway, because she was in a situation that she couldn't have gotten around to the front had she been able to go over the back. She backs a green belt. But regardless, she got locked out. And it was cold. It was cold. Fortunately, I noticed that she was out there and was able to drive around, and she was able to give me the code so I could go in through the garage and open the door and get her back in. But I mean, I would guess that keeping a hide key or something outside so that if you get locked out, you can actually get back in. And remember those little elements. If the back door key is different than the front door key, you want to have the right one out there. And they have some really neat inconspicuous things that you can hide those in.
Sure.
So
and now they have equipment that you can set your doors up with, where there's a code for your front door.
Yes.
You can use your phone for that. Another thing we recommend is try to get to know your neighbors. I know everybody doesn't have the luxury of having a relationship with their neighbors, but if you can make that relationship and have a trusted neighbor that maybe you could leave a key with, that's not a bad idea. We got to rely on each other. We have to help each other stay safe. In her situation, if you are going to go out and try to shovel snow or feed the birds or whatever, you got to make sure you have the proper clothing on. You need to bundle. You need to have jackets. You need to have warm clothes because that cold can sneak up on you.
Would you suggest if they live alone, that they at least let a friend or a relative know that they're going out to do that, so that if they don't check back in a certain amount of time, they have that backup plan? Somebody's going to check on them in 30 minutes to an hour if they don't hear from them?
Absolutely. That's a great idea. And the same goes for driving. We recommend that once we have these ice storms, you see cars broken down all over the roads, and oftentimes people are not equipped to traverse those roads without their vehicle. So it's a good idea to tell someone where you're going. Avoid driving if you can, but if you can't avoid it, do it during the day. Don't take shortcuts. Let someone know what route you're taking. Make sure you have extra clothes in your car. Have some water in your car. Have that cell phone charged. It's crucially important that you can get a hold of emergency responders in those moments you need it, and we'll come. If you're in trouble, we're going to come help you. But you have to be able to call us.
There's a really good app too to keep track of family members too. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called Life 360. And you can set up a family. You can set up different family groups so that you can keep track of, where you're. It's great for keeping track of your kids, your teenagers, and things like that. Especially, I know as a parent, you turn those kids loose on the road, you worry. Or if one of them's gone to the store, they're going to work in the early mornings, and there's black ice. It's very comforting to be able to pick up that phone and go, oh yeah, they made it to work, and just set it down and go on with your day.
Well, and with Life 360, it'll tell you how fast they're driving, where they're going.
I wasn't necessarily going to show that, but we probably don't have kids watching. So
one of my favorite things about that, though, is that it tells me when my children's phone gets below 10%.
It does, yes.
And I can send them a text message that
saying,
plug that phone in. That's one of my deepest fears, is that some tragic event would happen in the community, and I wouldn't be able to find my children to make them safe. So,
I think it's great too. My daughters are on a different one because, of course, they want the privacy away from mom and dad. They're adults, and I get that. But then, we have some of them on this, and my husband and I are on it. But you're right, it does provide some of that information, and yes, it will tell you how fast you're going. So that gives you an opportunity to make it a teachable moment. So, but all about safety. It provides you that way to keep up with them and kind of know that they're safe or they're where they're supposed to be. Or, God forbid, they go missing. At least you know where they were last. Even if that phone was turned off or that phone goes dead, at least you have a starting place. You know where they were.
Absolutely. So. The USAR team here in Tulsa, it's the Urban Search and Rescue team. We have dogs that are trained to locate people that are missing. So we're fortunate in this area that if someone with dementia or someone maybe even confused because of hypothermia got lost, we can try to locate them quickly before they put themselves in danger. One of the things I wanted to mention, your story made me think about her getting cold. And so some of the signs of hypothermia are uncontrolled shivering, memory loss, disorientation, incoherence, slurred speech, drowsiness, and apparent exhaustion. Shoveling the snow, working outside can make this happen faster. When you sweat, your body gets wet. Your body temperature drops much faster. So if you notice someone distributing these signs, your neighbor, or even yourself, it's important to get out of that wet clothing, get dry, get into a warm place so that you can start warming up your body temperature because, aside from frostbite and stuff, hypothermia can be very dangerous and it can lead to death.
And at what point would you recommend they call for emergency assistance if they are hypothermic or their body temperatures are dropping? Say they get inside and they take their temperature, and it's below a certain amount. Is there a point at which it gets low enough that they really should get that intervention rather than trying to get it back up on their own? Or
I would recommend that if you're if you're showing multiple of these signs, it might not be a bad idea to call. You don't have to be transported.
Yeah.
But you can get people that are trained to give you good, sound medical advice, whether you need to go or not. And if you're not sure, you should probably call, because there's nothing more important than your safety.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned cleaning things. One of the things that I hear about is like fires that are caused from like the soot or the oils in the fireplaces.
Creosote.
What is it?
Creosote. Yeah.
Creosote. Yeah. About how often should they get that done? And if it hasn't been done in how many years, they definitely need to get it done to avoid a fire.
Well, I believe the professionals recommend having that done yearly.
Yeah.
I know not everyone is able to do that financially, but if you can, you should. Another thing to check that people often don't do is that vent leaving your dryer.
Yes.
You may be doing a lot of laundry with those wet clothes in the wintertime during storms, and if that gets clogged up, with that lint, it can cause a fire in your home. And that's the last thing you want to be dealing with when you have cold weather outside. Not ever. You don't ever want to deal with that.
No, you don't.
But if we have dangerous situations outside, you want to stay out of that. We want to stay indoors and stay dry and warm if you possibly can. So to your point, yearly, if you can do that, it's very important. With the HVAC systems, if it's not combusting properly, it can cause that CO in your home. The same thing should you have the damper closed on your fireplace, and with your stove. Sometimes those things get old and they just don't work properly anymore. So another very important thing to do is to have a CO monitor in your home. No more important time than the winter when you're utilizing those heating devices.
Yeah.
You mentioned the space heaters. This is something that injures people every year. Their deaths. Very dangerous. We see it in Tulsa all the time. I'm not saying don't use space heaters. They have a purpose. They can keep you warm, and it's less expensive than other methods. But it's important that you plug those directly into an outlet. Don't use an extension cord.
Yeah.
We don't need to have multiple things plugged in to extension cords and overload those systems. And if you have an older one, which I don't even recommend you use an older one, but if you have an older space heater, they don't have safety backups. For instance, the newer ones, if they get knocked over, they turn off, which is a way many fires get started with space heaters.
Don't a lot of them, even if they get too hot, shut off?
The newer ones do, yeah. And so we recommend that you keep at least 3 feet away from those space heaters, and that's any combustible item. That's curtains, clothing. People sometimes set the laundry basket down beside it maybe to fold clothes. They're not thinking about that, but that can catch fire. Another thing with those older ones, if they don't have that switch on them, and you have pets in the house, they can knock those over. And once it's knocked over, it can cause fire. If you're asleep, it could fatally wound you, So we want to make sure that you're very careful with those space heaters and at least give them the respect that they deserve.
Yeah. In fact, we have pets in our home, and not young children so much anymore, but we definitely have pets. So I've gone from using, I know that there's different models, so there's the ones that have more of the vent in the front and the little radiating wires where you can see them get hot. And I've moved away from those because of pets and tails and different things. I don't want them getting in there and getting burnt on that. And I've gone more to the oil radiators that I have found very nice and much safer but yeah, I much prefer those. They seem to be a much safer option than the open front radiating ones that I don't know. They just, I guess as I've gotten older and seen some of the things that I've seen, I'm just not a fan of those as much.
Sure. So. And once people get cold, they get desperate sometimes, especially if you're not in if you don't have family or friends that you can rely on, or you're not in a financial situation where you could find other lodging. We see sometimes people utilize their gas stoves for heat.
Yeah.
Once that power is knocked out, that gas stove still works, but
It certainly does.
it potentially creates a danger that could kill you.
Yeah.
We've seen people with barbecue grills, propane
yeah.
heaters that they're bringing inside, and those things are not designed to be used indoors. They put fumes off and can hurt you. And if you don't have that CO monitor, you might not know you're in trouble until it's too late.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm a fan of gas cooking, because when we have those power outages here in town, you can still cook if you can light that burner with a match, which I will do, because, you lose your power, you lose the microwave, so there are some things that you do lose. But yes, using that to heat versus using it to warm up a can of soup for the family or whatever is there's a big difference in that. And that can create some issues there. So generators, though, I mean, we oftentimes people here in Oklahoma do prepare, so we oftentimes have generators, but I know we've had issues where they've set them up in the garage, and once again, that CO2 and exhaust has gotten into the home and caused issues there. How far would you recommend that those generators be away from the home, or away from access to the inside of the house?
Well, oftentimes I think that the issue with the space heaters, or rather the generators, is people, they don't have a long enough cord to plug it into their home to power the home, and it's not wired into the home.
That's true.
So if you're going to utilize those, and they do them in the garage because they're afraid they're going to get stolen. So
That's true.
Again, this is preparing ahead. You can fashion some sort of safety device in the ground that you can attach it to, lock it to make sure it's safe. I would keep it away from windows, that it could potentially, those fumes could come into the windows. And probably, that's what I would do. I'd put it on an area of my house where I didn't have windows. I would get a long enough cord that I could do that. And you need to check it. You need to have it checked, make sure it works properly. You need to have fuel to have it continue working, because if it stops working, now you don't have heat, and you may not have a way to go get more fuel. So, but yeah, to your point, they can be dangerous as well. You have to keep them in a place where they can't come into open doors and windows and stuff like that.
Okay. You mentioned salt and stuff for sidewalks. I know that salt oftentimes tears up your concrete walks, your sidewalks, and things like that, which, of course, if you're a member of our elder population, that can be a hazard post-winter with that. Is there a brand that you recommend that doesn't? Because I know some of them don't tear up those.
So there are some environmentally safe products that you can purchase. My recommendation would just be read those labels and do some research on it. I can't think of any on the top of my head, but sand is a safe option as well.
True.
Once that ice melts, that sand can be swept away. It's good for your
Washed
grass.
away,
Yeah, not a problem.
What about cat litter? I
Yeah,
know
cat
some
litter
people
works.
use that too.
It works as well.
Okay.
We have products like that absorb oil and stuff we use on the roadways, and that can be scooped up and removed once the weather changes. But if it keeps you safe from falling, that can be very worthwhile and important. As we get older, we don't heal as easily, and it's
the truth.
It's harder to rehab. We want to make sure that our population that's susceptible, young people, elderly people, can safely traverse and not have to deal with injuries after that. Can you imagine being in the middle of a winter storm and breaking your hip or your arm? That would just be tragic.
Yeah, absolutely. What about other lighting? Because I know we're moving into Christmas light season and Christmas trees and things like that. So I think it's important we touch on that as well, because I know that we have fires every year related to Christmas trees that have dried out that people have brought in. How much do you see a difference between the live trees or the cut trees versus the artificial trees when it comes to those fire hazards? I know from previous visits with fire department individuals that obviously those cut trees that are allowed to dry out are much more combustible, but do we see a lot of the artificial ones causing issues, or is it primarily those cut trees?
So things have changed, with fires and research and studies. Manufacturers have to make changes, to ensure that the public is safe. And lighting is one of those things. So the lights that we used to use, and some people may still use, the older lights, they do create heat, and they were more of a danger. any electrical equipment can develop a short and cause it to get hot where the short is. So there's always a possibility of it creating a problem. But the new lights are safer. They don't create heat. The lights themselves don't. So it reduces that danger. We don't often see the artificial trees burning. I mean, they'll burn if there's a fire in your house.
Yeah.
But they are not often the
source
cause of the fire.
Okay.
Now, live trees are a whole different ballgame. The problem people usually have is they don't properly water them. So they dry out very quickly, and then they are very combustible. So, and not necessarily lighting. It could be that space heater.
Yeah.
It could be smoking. There are a number of things that could cause that. And a lot of people have those in their entryways where they have that entryway window where people drive by can see. So you have to think, if you have something like that in that area that sets fire, it could potentially block your egress from your home. Which brings me to another thing. Many years ago, we had a fatality, very unfortunate fatality fire here in Tulsa, and the windows had bars on them, which you see in some parts of town, for security, to keep people from getting in.
But it also keeps people from getting out.
It also keeps people from getting out.
It also affects y'all's ability to get in.
It does. We have equipment that we can cut into those, but here's
time
here's
wasted,
the fact. Every second can count.
Yeah.
And so if we don't get the call quickly and the fire has already developed, significantly, it's not always fire that kills people. It's breathing in those toxic fumes. So, if you've already breathed that in, we might not be able to help you. And we don't want that.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to deal with that. We want to come and we want to make a difference and keep our community safe. So if you do have those security bars, they make them now where you can get out of them. They have like latches to remove those. But we don't really recommend you use those anyways. If you're concerned with your personal safety, it's a good idea to get an alarm for your home. And they have some cheaper options now than they used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that reminds me too that people should have a safety plan, because like you said, once you get out, you shouldn't be going back in.
That's right.
So and part of those safety plans, even in our family, is if you'll grab this dog if you can, and we'll grab that dog, or if you're worried about your pets as well, and you can get to them safely, each person be responsible for that dog or that pet or whatever. If not, get yourself out. And we make sure that all of our children know, if you need to break a window to get out, do that. Don't be afraid of getting in trouble because you're having to break a window. Don't let that be something that keeps you from getting out of that house. And where to meet up afterwards and different things like that. So I know that.
Absolutely. So having a plan is it's imperative. You have to have a plan, a safety plan for your family, and that's not just for fires. You need to think of different scenarios. Make a plan. Your children need to understand what the sound of the smoke detector is. If they wake up, they need to know what to do. And they make smoke detectors now that are not just the beeping noise. They have some you can put outside their rooms that may have mom or dad's voice on them, so that the child might be more likely to wake up to that. But this has so many different directions we could go.
I know.
One thing to do is shut those bedroom doors in your home when you go to sleep. When you doze, close that door. It can keep your child alive and allow that fireman to come through the window. If you have the smoke detector, which we hope you do, and if you don't, you can call the fire department. We'll bring you one.
I have a screaming alarm that screams at you.
If you have that smoke detector, which you should, it should alert you in time that you can get out of your home. That's the plan. That's what we want. We want those kids to know there's nothing in that home that is important enough to stop and take time for.
Yeah.
They need to get out.
Absolutely.
We love our pets. They're like family to us. If they're right near you and you can grab them,
That's
great.
Right.
But you can't go searching around.
No. They hide.
They do sometimes.
They're like kids. They will hide if they're afraid.
But they also will leave if you get get the door open for them sometimes. So I can't say it enough. Your life is so important. And our pets are important too, but there's not a book in that house or any material item that's worth losing your life for. So make sure they know to leave the house. Don't go back in. You should have a designated spot, like a tree, a neighbor's house, some place that's safe that's not in the way from fire trucks coming or other traffic, because we don't want them out in danger from trucks coming. And that way, everybody knows to go to the same place.
Yeah.
So you know everybody's out or not. And then when the firefighters arrive, you can say, we think our pet is still in there.
Yeah.
Here's where he might be.
Yep.
And those fire crews have equipment that allows them to breathe and be protected from those flames and those toxic fumes, and they'll go in and look for them. And that's the way you can stay safe. But again, plan. Make sure your kids know it, like the back of their hand. Make sure those doors are closed. You've seen pictures, and oftentimes, and we see it all the time, fires where the entire home is black. Everything's charred, and then you open a door, and there's no damage. Just because that door.
I mean,
It's
smoke
crazy.
maybe. It may smell like smoke, but it looks
Yeah,
great
it's certainly going to
otherwise.
smell, but
Yeah.
it's a survivable atmosphere.
Yeah.
Is the point. When you see the pictures, it really just changes your thought process. And I know a lot of those kids get scared. They want that door open. But maybe it's a matter of waiting until they go to sleep and then closing it.
And that's true,
you know?
yes. And that's one of the things, like I said, that's one of the things I did with my kids too when they were younger, because I knew that from many, many years in previous discussions. That,
And you
just
mentioned,
shut the doors at night.
and you mentioned talking to the kids about breaking the windows, and that's a
Yes.
good idea. It's a good idea to don't practice breaking the window.
No, but I mean,
But it's a good idea to
know-
practice the plan to say, okay, we've had a fire in the house. What are we going to do?
Yep.
Just let them walk through that and know what's safe to do. If you live, if your kids are upstairs, you better have a smoke alarm.
Yeah.
You better have a smoke
And
alarm.
a window ladder.
Window ladders are great. If you do have a window ladder, that's something you need to talk to your kids about, and they need to understand. They need to practice opening that
It's
window.
not for sneaking out of the house.
It's not for sneaking out of the house. It's for being safe. It's for being safe. But those are things that you could practice with them as well, so that if God forbid that should happen, then they know
Yeah.
what to do. And they might save your life.
That's true.
If the kids know the plan, they might save your life. So it might give them the opportunity to be the hero. And we see it all the time. We see young children, not too long ago, there was a 5-year-old that called 911 to let them know there was a fire at his home. And when we arrived, a member of that family was not breathing and did not have a pulse.
Oh, wow.
This is a young person. Our fire crews, he told us where she was. Our fire crews went in, pulled her out, and saved her life. And she's here today. And it's because her little brother called 911. 5 more minutes, could have been a whole different thing.
Fantastic. Yeah. And like I said, that all comes with being prepared and at least having those plans. I know y'all work with the school systems too locally and educate as much as we can. But like I said, it kills me every year when we're going into these colder months and that first fire happens. And fortunately, oftentimes it's, at least in my area, it's after I've had y'all on and done at least what I can to try to educate my community. But it inevitably happens. Every year that we have one of those tragic accidents that could have been prevented just from some of these preparations that could be done and having the plans and being prepared. And it is very important in my mind, because if we don't teach our kids to take those steps and if we don't prepare ourselves to take those steps, then oftentimes you're left floundering and in danger at a time that it's not good to be in danger, because things can move very quickly, or in the case of urgency, sometimes too slowly. So
There's nothing worse than being unprepared when the lives of your family are at stake.
yeah,
I'll tell you
I
that.
agree. Well, and thank you very much for coming. And
You're welcome.
we appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.